Man, what a game. What a game. I mean, if anybody who watched that Sunday night football game between the Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which might be one of the worst games I've seen in quite some time, this Browns versus Ravens game might be one of the best games I have seen in quite some time. Now, again, the result was not favorable for the Cleveland Browns, but I do think you have learned a ton of information about this team. And since this game was not playoffs or bust for the Cleveland Browns, that information is actually very useful because it's going to come into play very soon here for the Cleveland Browns, especially the Cleveland Browns hope to make any type of a run. So what is that information? What are the silver linings from this loss? And what did we learn in this game on Monday Night Football? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick before I get into this video, I want to give a quick shout out to my Dog Check tier Patreon members. And as always, I start with Michael Matique, Greg Ealer, Seth Harrison, Corporal Nick Lopez, Nick Nasty, Mandela Moore, the only Browns fan in Wisconsin, Batman, Jake Phillips, Rush Shear, Barack Kumar, John Albert, Masayua, Buds Roland, Ethan Rindauer, James Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Justin Cole, Philip Wilcoxon, Marie Vivert, Timothy McClure, Keith Anderson, Joshua Still, Sean Barron, Gagos Pisano, Dom Gazzulo, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Anthony Latham, Christian, Matt Bond, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Soul Train, Charles Work, Dan in West Texas, Billy, Michael Holdenack, Jared Austin, Moose Gentry, Patrick F., Austin Z., Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, IT Rex, Austin Bolin, Jesus Serrano, Joshua Paulus, Chris Fawns, Pick Down Browns Backers, Mark Kahn, Max Aldojo, Beerman 069, SSJ Swift, Andrew Hirsch, Feeling Dangerous 113, Dave Mike May, John Cummings, Robert Germain, Cleveland BCI, Anthony O, Bobo Regretti, Stuart Moore, TJ Showman on cue, Mark M, Jalil Salim Sr., Martha Crusnut, CK and Water Bear Marketing. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining the Patreon and supporting me that way. It means so much to me, and it is so important to the growth of this channel. So again, guys, thank you. Now, let's talk about this game, and boy, what a game it was for the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. Both teams came into it needing something out of it. The Baltimore Ravens literally playing for their season, and boy, they played like it. And the Cleveland Browns playing for a chance at first place and an opportunity that they will have another one next week to clinch the playoffs. Now, the Browns obviously had a little bit less to play for than the Baltimore Ravens. Also, the Browns coming into this game weren't as healthy as the Baltimore Ravens were. You didn't have Austin Hooper. You didn't have Denzel Ward. You didn't have Ronnie Harrison. You were out a ton of wide receivers. So you were in a tough spot against the Baltimore Ravens from that standpoint, but the Baltimore Ravens had some injuries of their own that they were dealing with. Lamar had to leave the game for a couple of drives, so by no means are the injuries an excuse here for anybody. This was a great game, and unfortunately for some, Baltimore came out on top, but the glad thing about this not being a playoff game is that it's not sudden death for the Cleveland Browns. They get to live on. They get to learn from this and apply it to more important games going forward. And the biggest note that I want to give to you Cleveland Browns fans, young and old, because I don't think we have a ton of experience in this as a collective group, but this is what it's going to feel like. These games where it feels tight in your chest, where your hands are just incredibly sweaty, where you're nervous the entire game, this is what it's going to be like for the rest of the month. This is what this is. This is what meaningful December football is. And I know it's such a foreign concept to so many because we've either never experienced it in our life or just experienced it for the first time in like 30 years. But this is it. This is December football. it's going to feel like this. This game was a little bit on steroids, but it's going to feel like this. This ain't going nowhere. And this was great experience for this Cleveland Browns team to get for a young coaching staff, for a young team, one of the youngest teams in the NFL, definitely one of the youngest competing teams in the NFL. This experience that they're going to get from playing what was a playoff game, essentially, against the Baltimore Ravens on national TV, priceless. Priceless. Cannot put a price tag on it. They're going to learn so much about what it means to play in a playoff game. Baker Mayfield had to tell the crowd to get quiet at one point. That's how loud the stadium got with like a third capacity. That's how crazy things got today. So undoubtedly a great experience for the young players and the young coaching staff. I think we learned a lot. They came out a little jumpy, a little anxious, and I think we learned a lot about this team. Now, let's talk about the part of this game that was probably the least that we could learn from, and that's definitely going to be the defense. Woo! We got some problems in the secondary. I think we all, myself included, kind of shoo-shooed away what happened in the Tennessee game in the second half. No. Those problems are real. Those problems exist. Now, fortunately, next week, you play the New York Giants, who aren't necessarily the most prolific passing team in the NFL, but you got some things here you need to get figured out now. A lot of these things can be corrected if Ronnie Harrison can come back healthy at the end of the year and Denzel Ward can come back. But if those two things do not happen, you have a major problem with your secondary because it is not just bad, it's slow, and you don't want to be slow. That was the biggest problem. MJ Stewart holding 2 times on that first drive that pretty much put Baltimore in scoring position because he was scared that Hollywood Brown was going to beat him off the line of scrimmage. If he's that slow that he has to worry about Hollywood Brown beating him off the line of scrimmage, well, Hollywood Brown, I mean, I'm trying to be respectful. The guy actually had a decent game today. Does not beat that many people off the line of scrimmage like that. You have a massive problem. Whenever Lamar got the edge and he got past the defensive line, you can see the lack of speed with the pursuit angles just being blown up. They look slow out there. They look like they were at their third stringers. And at points, it looked like this game was about to get ugly because the defense was so bad. I think the defensive line played well. Your linebackers, B.J. Goodson and Mack Wilson, played awful. I felt like Carl Joseph also played awful. Both those guys missing holes all day, not being in the right place, overbiting, just bad defensive tape from those players, especially B.J. Goodson, who just completely vacated his spot in the defense and let Lamar run for like a 40-yard touchdown. It was bad on the defensive side of the ball. There is no getting around that. Like, none of this was good. And I think a lot of this is the secondaries depth being stretched to such an extreme point that it's not recoverable at this point. You're going to need to get healthy. You're going to need to get Ronnie Harrison back. You're going to need to get Denzel Ward back, and desperately so, especially for the playoffs. Because, Lamar only threw like 12, 13 times, but I think he had like 2 touchdowns. That's unacceptable. So that has to be fixed. I honestly don't think it's Joe Woods' fault because the personnel for the secondary is awful right now. You're legitimately looking at the secondary where Sendejo might be your best player right now with how everybody lines up. Maybe Terrence Mitchell. Either way, those are guys who are backups on good secondaries, normally backups for this team. But those are your 2 best people in the secondary. You got no shot when that happens. I don't care how bad the wide receivers are. And that proved out to be the case this week. We could talk about Cody Parkey missing a field goal and missing an extra point, those 4 points not being on the board, even though I think it's a little bit unfair to count the extra point as a missed opportunity because the Browns did get that point back when they blocked their extra points. You can count it, but they also made a play to get that back. I think the missed field goal is the most important thing there. But, the conditions are what they are. Cody Parkey is who he is. Like, he's not Justin Tucker. He was never supposed to be Justin Tucker. I can't hold him up to a Justin Tucker standard. He was going to miss a field goal eventually. It sucks that this was the time he chose to miss it. He had been so solid in so many difficult games all season. I'm going to give him a little bit of a break here. So I'm not going to go full, Austin Seibert mode on Cody Parkey. Thought Miles played well. I thought Sheldon Richardson played well. I thought the defensive line played well. It was just the what was going on in the backhand was just too horrendous from a run stopping standpoint and a pass stopping standpoint. It was horrendous back there. So the defense has a lot of things to fix. I don't think it's all on Joe Woods. Joe Woods can't make MJ Stewart that much of a better player, right? Like, he can coach him up and try to put him in the right positions, but when your secondary is that injured to this point, I mean, no Greedy, no Denzel, no Grant Delpit. We've not had that the whole season. No Ronnie Harris. You're missing your entire starting secondary. Like, what else can you do at this point, right? Like, it is what it is until you get healthy. And honestly, when the secondary was a little bit healthy against Philly, they held up. So I'm not going to throw Joe Woods under the bus this week. I think this is much different from the struggles early on. I think this is very much personnel based. But now let's talk about what we all want to talk about, the offense. This game was an absolute roller coaster ride because at the beginning, it was a little chunky, a little up and down. And then we got to that point in the middle of the third quarter where Baker throws what is basically a pick six. And again, if Baker doesn't throw that pick, you probably win this game. So again, as much as Baker did, you also have to weigh that in. He did throw a pick six that ended up being crucial, but it's hard for me to blame the game on him given how great he played in the fourth quarter, and how much of a chance that he gave you. But he throws that pick six. It seems like the game is over. The momentum is going Baltimore's way. Like, it seemed like a wrap at that point. But this team has heart. This team has guts. And, you know, we've been waiting all season for this team to show that, right? The two times somebody got up big on them, they just folded. And it reminded you of that Tennessee game in 2019 all over again when they just folded after they got a big lead on them. And, you know, they were all bark, no bite. But this team, you know, they have a reverse mantra, right? All bite, no bark, or whatever it is. And they lived up to it, man. They showed a lot of heart. And I know this team is 9-4. They're not in the realm of getting moral victories anymore. This is a playoff contending team. I get that. I get people who want to be tough about this. But you also have to take But just because it's a loss doesn't mean everything was bad. You can take some silver linings that will be useful. And I think what you learned about your offense, specifically what you learned about your quarterback when his back was against the wall, when he had to make up for a mistake that was all his doing, and when he had to play his best football in the biggest moment of his career, ooh, that man showed up. You know what I mean? That is important. That Baker Mayfield showed that he has that dog in him. That's important. That's going to be useful going down the line. This is the second time this year where Baker has had his back against the wall, needs to score, or the game is absolutely over. And Baker Mayfield not only comes through in one of the most clutch ways possible. I mean, he had that 4th and 6 touchdown throw to Rashard Higgins. He had that 3rd and 6 run in the red zone where it was looking like Baltimore might have made a stop there. The touchdown at the end of the game with 1 minute left. Baker Mayfield has proven to me, I no longer question it. I no longer entertain the question, is Baker Mayfield the Browns' future at quarterback? Yes. I'm no longer entertaining that question. That is an absolute that's the answer. Baker Mayfield's the future for the Cleveland Browns at quarterback. Unless he gets injured or something crazy like that happens, he is the future for this team at quarterback. The Browns got themselves one. This guy has guts. This guy shows up in the right moments. This guy is clutch. This guy is the type of person that I would want to follow into a football game, especially a close football game. Browns got their guy. We can argue all day long about who should have went first, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. The fact of the matter is that Lamar went to the right situation for Lamar. Josh Allen went to the right situation for Josh Allen, and Baker Mayfield finally ended up in the right situation for Baker Mayfield. So who cares where they were picked? All that matters is that these three are good quarterbacks. We're going to get a ton of great matchups coming down in their careers, and I can't wait to watch all of them. But yeah, Baker Mayfield, man, he proved something to me. And I'm not going to doubt this dude when his back's up against the wall. This dude is what we thought he was after that rookie year. We had the doubts after 2019, but you know what? I didn't even think he was clutch. he's proven that he's got that. And you know what? That's going to be important. You know, when you're playing in the playoffs, hopefully you're playing some of these games to clinch the playoffs. That's going to be an important thing to know that you have in your back pocket, that you can rely on Baker Mayfield to go down there and get you one. And how many other quarterbacks in the NFL can you say would you have that much faith in going down and being able to get you one like Baker Mayfield? It's not a long list. There's not a ton of guys who can do it like that. There might be quarterbacks who have better stat lines or people might consider technically better, but, 2 minutes and you need a drive. Baker Mayfield, he's starting to become on that short list of guys who can make that happen, and that's a very good thing. So Baker Mayfield, tip my hat off to you. There is no more doubt about you in the city of Cleveland, in my opinion. Anybody who is doubting you just don't like you at this point. Baker's the quarterback. Case done, case settled. Don't ask me if we're going to take his fifth-year option or anything like that. Yeah, we're taking his fifth-year option. We're giving him at least $25 million for 5 years. Like, we're keeping Baker. This is our dude. This is the guy. This is who we're getting behind. Baker proved that tonight. I wish he could have proved it in the win. You know what? The man did everything he needed to do. Every single thing he needed to do, he did. He tried his best to get that game for you at the end of it. You just couldn't do it. He couldn't play defense, unfortunately. But Baker Mayfield proved it all to you. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt is always nothing to prove there. We're very good in this game. Wide receivers, though, could not get separation most of this game. That is very important. The wide receivers could not get separation. The Ravens decided very early on that they didn't think that Jarvis Landry and Rashard Higgins or Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones could beat, Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphreys. Now, Marcus Peters got injured later on in the game. They had some injuries in the secondary. There were some matchups that the Browns were finally able to exploit to get a little bit of separation. But for most of this game, absolutely no separation. This Ravens defense was suffocating when it came to the secondary. The exact opposite experience that the Cleveland Browns defense was giving the Baltimore Ravens. Wide receivers, I think this was a game where you missed Odell. I think you're going to run into that more and more once we play tougher and tougher opponents where, hey, having Odell here just because he swallows up a team's number one corner at the bare minimum would be very useful because then you can have Jarvis or somebody you can get better separation with than Marlon Humphreys. It just wasn't a favorable matchup for the wide receiving core of the Cleveland Browns here. Kevin Stefanski, I felt like he called a good game, had some mistakes here and there, could have done better. Look, the offense scored 40-something points. It's hard for me to blame the game on the offense, right? It's obvious that the defense needed to make that 4th and 6 stop. Couldn't give up a touchdown there, gave up a touchdown there. Inexcusable. You get Trace McSorley out there. You should have probably forced a 4th down within their own territory. So Lamar coming back for that 4th and 6 never becomes a thing. But that is what it is. That's the moments that made up this game. And now I'm going to go into the final take. When you play games with high stakes against good teams who are also playing with the same high stakes, the tiniest of things become massive in retrospect. Something tiny like a missed field goal becomes massive. Something tiny like a missed extra point becomes massive. Something small like not getting a 3rd down stop on the 30-yard line and letting that drive go down to the 40-yard line becomes massive. It's the smallest of small things that matter in games of this kind of magnitude. And you know what? It's a good lesson that the Browns learned in December because it's not a lesson you want to learn in January. So that's good for the Cleveland Browns that they got to learn what this kind of game feels like and how small, tiny little itty-bitty mistakes in this kind of a game can make a massive difference. Yes, the Cleveland Browns lost. But also keep in mind, the Cleveland Browns did not lose any playoff positioning, did not lose their spot. All that they lost was a small, fractional chance at being able to win the division. Yes, you can't win the division. That's out the way. But hey, you're still in the same spot you were in on Sunday, on Tuesday, which is the 5th seed in the playoffs with a chance to clinch if you can beat the New York Giants, which isn't going to be a layup. Definitely not going to be a gimme. They're playing for a lot, too. It's going to be a tough game, but it's a game you could win. But you know what? You also learned a lot about this team and a lot of good things about this team. The bad things we knew, the secondary being bad, the injuries, we all knew all that stuff that was possible, that Lamar could have a big game or that the Ravens could score a ton of points. We knew all that was possible. What we didn't know was possible was that the Browns could keep up. And not just keep up, Baker could be clutch. This is somebody that a lot of people said was a game manager, a quarterback that you had to put on an Andy Dalton diet. Let me tell you, Andy Dalton never show up like this. No. So you learned a lot about your quarterback. You learned a lot about your team. And you know what? That's going to be useful going forward. But it all depends on how this team makes use of it. I know I'm looking forward to it. But to many Browns fans, younger and older than me, hey, welcome to December football. That feeling in your chest you felt on Monday, that's going to be in your chest till the rest of the season. So honestly, decide now whether you like that feeling and you want to embrace that feeling and watch that feeling for the rest of the season, because these games will be important. You got some games against some good teams coming up. This is what it's going to feel like. So decide right now if this is for you or this is not. But this is what December football is all about. And I am looking forward to every minute of it. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.